I'm Mr. Beat, and I'm delivering this message to you via the internet. But it would be nice if I could just write you all a nice little letter. Why? Because it takes extra time to write a letter, to put it in an envelope, to frustratingly attempt to find a stamp somewhere, and to walk down the street to actually put that letter in the mailbox. By the way, you can mail me a letter. Check out that P.O. box. Yeah! Now, it can take some time for your mail to be delivered. Days, even weeks in some cases, if the mail has to travel to the other side of the planet. Mail today mostly gets around relatively quickly, though, via planes, trains, and automobiles. Heck, if you don't mind paying a little extra, today you can get a package delivered from New York City to Los Angeles in no more than 2 days. But what about before planes, trains, and automobiles? Well, usually it was stagecoaches and steamboats. Instead of taking 2 days for that package to get from New York City to Los Angeles, it might take up to 2 months. If you were lucky, you might be able to get it delivered in 1 month, but that was the overland route, which was more dangerous. If you got in an accident, like, I don't know, getting run over by a wagon wheel or something, there was no hospital nearby you could go to. Or if you got the measles, you could be hundreds of miles away from the nearest doctor. Not that the doctor could save you if you did find them anyway, but let's go back. Beginning in the 1500s, people began to build canals in certain parts of the world to transport stuff more quickly, but those were massive, expensive projects, and ain't no way they were building a canal across North America. In the early 1800s, the British developed the modern railroad, and by the 1830s, folks were building the first commercial railroads around the world, including the United States. However, those early railroads were also massive, expensive, and inefficient projects. Many of them were not profitable, and railroad companies often relied heavily on government money just to function. Plus, the earliest commercial railroads were slow, barely getting over 20 miles per hour. Even by the 1850s, most American trains rarely went faster than 50 miles per hour. But dadgummit, Americans were moving west. During the California Gold Rush, thousands of prospectors, investors, and entrepreneurs made their way there. In 1850, California had enough people to become a state. Meanwhile, thousands more settlers followed the California Trail, the Mormon Trail, and the Oregon Trail to settle other parts of the West. Oregon became a state in 1859. By that time, its population was more than 50,000, and California's population was already approaching 400,000. But you see, there was this big gap between heavy American settlement in the east and settlement in the west. In between, you had various American Indian nations and scattered American forts, but other than that, in the 1850s at least, most Americans had skipped over settling this land, and so it was mostly the frontier. Oh, and I forgot to mention the giant mountains. There were a lot of big freaking mountains out there. So anyway, there was this disconnection of sorts. That's where three men saw an opportunity. William Russell, Alexander Majors, and William Waddell were three dudes who were already successful working together in the transportation industry and created a new business that would quickly deliver stuff between Missouri and California. They already had sweet federal government contracts from before and convinced the federal government to give them some more of that sweet federal government money.
Socialism is based
to get mail quickly delivered across the country. Russell, Majors, and Waddell decided to build a trail between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California. They chose Sacramento since that's where the California state legislature met, plus an overnight boat quickly connected it to San Francisco. They chose St. Joseph since that's where the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad, which was the first railroad to cross Missouri, ended. In fact, in 1860, St. Joseph felt like it was at the western edge of the country in many ways. West of there usually meant at least a 3-month journey full of hardships, man. Anyway, Russell, Majors, and Waddell organized and established an operation in less than 2 months. They built a trail connected by 5 divisions: St. Joseph to Fort Kearny to Horseshoe Station to Salt Lake City to Roberts Creek, and Roberts Creek to Sacramento. At each connection, a superintendent along the trail between 153 and 190 stations. They hired around 200 station masters, but they would not use stagecoaches to deliver stuff. Oh no! Instead of the stagecoach, Russell, Majors, and Waddell proposed just getting a bunch of fast horses and small riders with specially designed saddlebags called mochilas. After all, their goal was to deliver the mail from St. Joe's to Sacramento in 10 days. Although many naysayers had said that was impossible, they gathered between 400 and 500 of the fastest horses they could find. And yes, some were ponies. They were smaller, but because of that, they were quicker. And yes, the riders were smaller too. In fact, no riders were hired who weighed more than 125 pounds. Additionally, in order to reduce the weight on each horse's back, they were only allowed to carry the mail, a water sack, and a revolver with them on their journey. Speaking of their journey, each rider would be expected to travel between 75 miles and 100 miles for a typical route. The horses, however, would be changed out every 10 to 15 miles. By the end of March 1860, Russell, Majors, and Waddell had hired 80 riders. It was pretty easy to attract these riders because even though the job would be tough, the pay would be pretty good.
Pretty good.
They got $125 a month as pay. Well, hey, remember inflation, all right? That's like $4,200 a month in today's money, I think. Look, they were paid well above average back then, okay? Anyway, Majors, who was very religious, gave each rider a Bible after they were hired, and he required them to swear an oath. I'll go ahead and take that oath now. I, Mr. Beat, do hereby swear before the great and living God that during my engagement, and while I am an employee of Russell, Majors, and Waddell, I will under no circumstances use profane language, that I will drink no intoxicating liquors, that I will not quarrel or fight with any other employee of the firm, and that in every respect I will conduct myself honestly, be faithful to my duties, and so direct all my acts as to win the confidence of my employers. So help me God. Okay, well, it's likely that the riders regularly broke this oath, especially the profane language and fighting part. Oh, and the drinking part. They definitely drank a lot of alcohol. The Central Overland California and Pikes Peak Express Company, which later became more famously known as the Pony Express, officially began operations on April 3rd, 1860, when the first westbound rider left St. Joseph and the first eastbound rider left Sacramento. I'm standing here at the location of the eastern terminus of the Pony Express. That building back there used to be the stables of the horses who were sent out to deliver mail, those magnificent horses. And it was a pretty exciting place to be on April 3rd, 1860, when the first Pony Express rider headed out. Here is the actual location of where the first rider left St. Joseph. That first rider was likely a young dude named Johnny Fry, by the way. Today, those stables are a wonderful museum that you can now visit in St. Joseph, Missouri. And here are actual letters carried from those first two Pony Express trips. As Russell, Majors, and Waddell predicted, the trips took approximately 10 days. But if you were one of the folks who actually had your mail delivered in those first two trips, it would be expensive. In today's money, it would have cost you around $150 to send a half-ounce letter. That said, it did get cheaper later on. By the end of the Pony Express, it cost around $30 in today's money to send a half-ounce letter. The managers of the Pony Express told their riders that the mochila was the most important. At all costs, protect that freaking mochila that had the mail in it. Riders rode day and night, summer and winter. It really was nonstop, even through the treacherous Sierra Nevada. For the most part, most riders had a smooth journey. On average, they covered 190 miles a day with an average speed of around 8 miles per hour. One reason why they cover so much ground so quickly is because riders usually changed horses every 10 to 15 miles. There were disruptions. For example, in May, just a month after after operations began, the Pony Express riders found themselves in a war zone during the Paiute War, which mostly took place near Pyramid Lake in Utah Territory. However, contrary to popular belief, it was more dangerous being a station master during that time than an actual rider. American Indians ambushed several Pony Express stations throughout the war, killing as many as 16 station workers. Though the evidence is shaky, possibly 4 Pony Express riders were also killed during it. The best documented case we have is of Billy Tate, a 14-year-old rider who Paiute Indians chased down. Now, Tate had a gun, and the Paiute just had bows and arrows. And supposedly, before they killed him with arrows, he had killed 7 of them with his gun. And if you're surprised that a boy as young as 14 did this job, the youngest Pony Express rider on record was 11-year-old Charlie Bronco Miller. That dude deserves his own video, for crying out loud. Apparently, this is a picture of him when he was 11. Just kidding. It was taken much later in his life. He was the last surviving Pony Express rider, dying in 1955 at the age of 105. During World War II, he tried to fight as a soldier, but the army wouldn't let him in since he was, in his 90s. He also used to go around with Buffalo Bill Cody as part of his Wild West show and shared his Pony Express adventures. Speaking of Buffalo Bill, whose real name was William Cody, he is probably the most famous Pony Express rider of all, and he's a big reason why there's so much mythology surrounding the Pony Express. However, he probably actually wasn't a Pony Express rider. Now, he did likely work as a messenger for Russell, Majors, and Waddell, but there is no evidence of him actually carrying the mail for the Pony Express. Despite that, Buffalo Bill used to brag that he once rode 384 miles in a single run. Total bullcrap. Now, he was likely stealing the thunder from Robert Pony Bob Haslam, who actually did ride 380 miles straight between Lake Tahoe and Fort Churchill and back with only 9 hours of rest during the Paiute War. That's a picture of Pony Bob several decades later. Another notable Pony Express rider is Jack Keatley, who rode for the Pony Express during its entire existence. Apparently, he once rode 340 miles straight in 31 hours without stopping to rest or eat. At the end of the ride, he was supposedly taken from his saddle sound asleep. Now, the oldest Pony Express rider was possibly Major Howard Egan, who was actually the superintendent of the division from Salt Lake City to Roberts Creek, but he filled in as a substitute rider when riders just didn't show up. He was 45. The Pony Express only operated for 19 months, but during that time, it developed a reputation as the absolute fastest way to get information from the East Coast to the West Coast. One example of this is the speed of delivering the news of the 1860 presidential election results. Thanks to the Pony Express, California's newspapers were able to report Abraham Lincoln's victory just 7 days and 17 hours after the East Coast papers, a record at the time. However, there were 2 main reasons why the Pony Express had such a brief run. The first reason is probably no surprise. On October 26, 1861, San Francisco was now in direct contact with New York City. Why? The completion of the first transcontinental telegraph line. Now, communication was almost instant. In fact, for most of the span of the Pony Express's existence, workers were putting up that transcontinental telegraph line as the riders rode past them. The second reason why the Pony Express ended was that it never made any money. At all. Despite getting heavy government subsidies, it was a complete financial failure for Russell, Majors, and Waddell, costing $200,000 while only making $90,000.
When I look at what Russell, Majors, and Waddell did with their $1 million investment, $750,000, and they went bankrupt, you never heard them cry about it. They went on with their life. But I think the important thing to know is how young people. They stepped up because they didn't want their mother to be the one to go to work. The children said, you stay home, I'll go do the job. How they believed in, if I do something, how important this letter is. Does it have money in it? Does it tell a family they've had a new member? Does it tell the family that someone's passed away? You know, the stories of lives of the American people were carried in those letters.
Today, the legacy of the Pony Express lives on. First of all, while I visited the Pony Express Museum in St. Joe's, there are actually lots of museums and historical sites you can visit along where the trail used to be. That's also where you find much of the approximately 250 known examples of Pony Express mail that still exist today. There's even still original segments of the actual trail that have been preserved, so check them out and stuff.
But I think when I think of American history and I think of the biggest icon that's still being talked about for almost the 161 years, is the Pony Express.
The Pony Express was the first fast mail line across the North American continent.
It carried the mail, it told the story, and it set up some of the very first communication to connect the East and the West to make our country become whole.
Though it was short-lived, it was extremely influential. Ever since it ended, it has been romanticized as a big part of American culture. And again, a big reason why that is Buffalo Bill Cody. The Pony Express has been featured in many movies and TV shows, and if you ask most Americans today about it, they know all about its legendary status. The Pony Express symbolizes the ideals that many appreciate when they think about the Wild West, or American culture in general. Freedom, innovation, individualism, grit, and determination. Above all, embracing adventure. Thanks to Cindy Daffron from the Pony Express National Museum here in St. Joseph, Missouri, for letting me interview her and sharing her knowledge. Also, this episode complements an episode of Jobsolete that I just released, my podcast. That's right. You can check out the link in the description. That episode is about the now obsolete job of being a Pony Express rider and what it was like, so I go into more detail with my co-host Helen Hong. So check it out. And finally, which museum should I visit next? And how should I get there? Should I fly a plane? Should I ride a train? Should I drive a car? Or should I ride a horse? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching.